you're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show. My name is Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
Good evening, mate.
And Neil.
Hello.
And no Laurie as promised today. No Laurie basically. I've got nothing really to add to that. Valentine's Day today. Love very much not in the air. Not a great week or so, is it?
No,
it's probably not a great deal more to say about that. So that's been the Neil Lamptey Show. If you want to get in touch with us, moments of the week, Paul.
It's more of a moment of the day, and today is the 20th anniversary of our first ever victory at Villa Park, with the magnificent goal line tapping from Viral Moldovan, which was just a tremendous day. And part of me still thinks we're going to win the FA Cup in 1998.
Oh yeah,
that was very frustrating that we went out to Sheffield United. But yeah, so my moment of the day is, week is my moment of 20 years, which was possibly the greatest Valentine's Day that most Cov fans have ever had.
It's just occurred to me, actually, how far... That's the longest that anyone has stretched the idea of a moment since we've been doing this, isn't it? You've picked something from 20 years ago.
Of the week.
It's been a bad week. It's been a very bad week. And that was... The problem is, it's like one of those things, like, you're really angry and you're like, I hate this football club. And then it's like, oh yeah, Viral Moldovan scored that goal, didn't he? Yeah, that was ace. That was really cool. I'm so glad I was there for that. And it just makes you remember that there are sort of reasons to celebrate sport in this club. And there are good things that go along with the shit.
Viral Moldovan. You wonder if a player like that, don't you? I've thought a lot about this recently. You wonder if a player like that now was playing for us in League Two, how good he'd be. Do you think...
He was... I mean, I know he didn't redo it for Cov, but I think he scored against England in 2...
Euros, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, Euros and maybe even the World Cup, or played against England in the World Cup.
And
definitely played against us in 98, might have been 2000 as well.
And I think he scored like 1 million goals for Grasshoppers, wasn't it? Is that where he come? I'm sure he come from there. I'm going to have to look this up in a second.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But I just feel... I feel like the overall standard of football has increased so phenomenally over the last 20 years or so that I wonder whether... I mean, he didn't really get a look in past Huckabee and Dublin, did he? Who admittedly the best partnership we've had in our lifetime, perhaps.
He was only. He only played at he only played at Villa Park. I think Dublin. That was one of those games where he just showed that he was probably the best centre half, or one of the best centre halves the club's ever had, as well as being one of the best strikers the club's ever had.
I always think that's a bit much.
Oh, go on.
He didn't play that much for us in defence, did he?
He played enough, and he was brilliant every time he did it.
I think we're just willing him to be brilliant, really. Although it could have been warped over time. I guess he was quite... I mean, the fact that England were considering taking him as a potential centre-back as well, I guess that suggests something. On the point of players who... on standards, though, here's one to consider. David Rennie in the Premiership now. God almighty.
Yeah. Who do you
Players don't look like him now either,
No,
do
they don't. But I'm not sure players ever looked like him, specifically.
Yeah.
Players never look like him. Players never look like Roger Van Gaal.
True, they didn't, did they?
Yeah. It's not that case.
Fucking awful, didn't they? Everybody back then. Ridiculous.
Moldovan, for the sake of posterity, scored 44 goals in 51 games for Grasshoppers. In a career that took in a really spectacular set of team names. Huge Scrabble scores going on here, but I'm not going to bore you with that. Neil, what was your moment of the week?
My moment was the community day. So not so much the eerie atmosphere, and also not the outrageous counting, because I mean, quite how they can get away with saying that's a record attendance is beyond me. I mean, you can't just give away 15,000 tickets and then just make out that counts towards the attendance. It just... I mean, I'm sure it was in the 20s somewhere, but to suggest that was the same level as that Leeds attendance a few years back was a bit balmy. But no, my moment of the week was just the kind of the notion of the community day and the fact that everybody kind of went with it, and the club did a good job with it, and people actually turned up. Not as many as we thought it would, but still a lot of people turned up, and the stands looked pretty full. So yeah, that was just a good day. Well done, people.
Just to be clear, you're saying that the tickets that were given away, the people didn't turn up. You're not saying that they did turn up, but because they were free tickets, they shouldn't count towards the attendance.
Oh, no. If you come in, it counts to the attendance. I mean, attendance is how many people are in the ground at any time, I would have thought. I mean, there's always this debate about season tickets and whether they should be counted or not, and because they just count them anyway. But what happened was load of tickets given out. I mean, plenty of people took up on the offer, but it was very gappy in places, so it certainly wasn't. It wasn't what I expected 28,000 in the Ricoh Arena to look like. Put it that way.
Yeah,
I think if they were going to do it again, which I highly recommend they should do, I think they should probably try and not do it in February, because I would have thought there's probably a couple of hundred who just looked out the window, saw the weather, and just thought, nah. But if it had been a nice sunny day at the end of the season, start of the season, they probably would have been able to have. People would have been probably more inclined just to sort of risk it, but the weather was quite poor, and whether or not that put people off. But yeah, I think there was, it was still a very good attendance considering, and they should do that more often. They should do it a couple of times a season, because it's just a shame that the team didn't really respond to it. But they did try, and that's all we ever asked for, is reduce the tickets, see if people come, and people did come, and hopefully someone out of all those people who came for the first time's got the bug and wants to return against Lincoln. Hopefully.
Yeah, I don't quite agree with people. I kept seeing people say, you should do this every week. Well, first of all, you can't do this every week, but it's just like, there's so many reasons why that just doesn't make any sense. I mean, do it as a one-off. People get whipped up into it and they turn up, but do it every week. People, it's not just money, is it, that people aren't going to the football for? There's many other reasons. So it's not quite as simple as just putting it down to £5 for the rest of time and expecting 28,000 each week. It works as an isolated event, and you kind of get that follow-up. Then hopefully you like Paul says, you get some new fans who are kind of drawn to it, and hopefully they come back in the future.
It'd be like doing a 100-metre sprint and being neck and neck for the very last bit of it, and just giving it that extra push to get you over the finish line, and then finishing that race and somebody saying to you, next time run that fast all the time. You're like, well, it doesn't quite work. I'm going to finish off with my moment of the week, and then we'll talk about the disappointment of Accrington. I want to discuss briefly the least that any one individual has ever footballed, which was the moment at the very end of the highlights from the Colchester game of Liam Kelly. Has anyone seen this? No,
I've heard you describe it.
Well, he punted it. It's not awful. You can tell that he's just trying to play a long pass to try and get us going towards the end of the game, that he just gives straight away. But then the guy that picks it up just runs towards him. And it's bizarre. He kind of he looks at him. He's there, like running. The player's running towards Kelly, and Kelly just seems to take one step backwards and just let him pass. All I can think is he must have just been absolutely knackered by the end of it. It was just like, I am not even prepared to consider tackling.
I need to see this. It sounds.
I watched it 3 or 4 times this morning to see whether it was as bad as it's the least. It looks really bad because he sort of makes the movement that a human would make if he was trying to tackle a player, but he goes in the wrong direction. He just walks backwards. The guy just sort of almost looks at him as he goes past, and you just think, wow, that is for the end of a game where you're 2-1 down. Even if you're knackered, you must have been some knackered to have thought, no way.
This sounds like an American soccer film. You know, the way they try and direct those, where it's just not realistic at all. They're just putting in these really obscene, sort of contrived tackles.
Can we, before we move on to Accrington, can we talk very quickly about my favourite ever? We've probably talked about this before. I've only got about 3 things that I ever say. Do you remember the film She's All That?
Oh God, I do. Yeah.
Do you remember the bit? Do you know the bit that I'm talking about?
No,
there's an awesome bit. I'll try and dig this out and tweet it later. It's an awesome bit of that. It's Freddie Prinze Jr. and obviously he's like the high school soccer, like the top guy. and there's this piece of footage. I'm probably warping this with memory, but the way that I remember it is that they show this like really unconvincing thing of him like dribbling around maybe 8 or 9 people, but that like sort of, you know, running around in circles and sort of like, and it's like it's completely, it's the sort of thing that you'd put together if you've never watched football. And then he gets to the goal line and he just like spanners it like he like, again, completely unfeasible how you could miss it. But the funny thing about it is that his teammate runs up to him afterwards and goes, "What's wrong, man? That's like the 9th one of them that you've done all game."
God,
it's awful. It really stuck with me. But there's loads of examples of it. That just seems to be the standout one for me, of where you just think, why didn't you just ask someone who'd watched for at least one
that's
game?
it, isn't it? You do science films, you get in the science expert just to run it by them. Right, does this make sense? Why do they never just go to the footballer and say, look, no, that's not quite right, is it? Because actually, I remember watching Day After Tomorrow, and there was these English guys in it, and they were clearly English, and they were watching football, Man United on telly. I've watched the film a lot of times, and he kept saying, shoot the ball. Who says that? Surely someone who was English in the room said, you might want to change that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because they must do like test screening stuff, don't they? Where somebody must go, no. Look, this might seem like a small point, but it massively undermines your film.
There's Konami football games as well, the commentary on those as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would be nicer to talk about this for the rest of the podcast rather than moving on to the Accrington game. But given that we claim to be a Coventry City football podcast, Paul, you're going to talk to us about the 90-minute version of just shooting himself in the foot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard to describe the Accrington game because we were sort of discussing this at the time. You don't know how angry to be or how frustrated to be or how annoyed to be because you're not really sure how healthy some of the players were. And you hear afterwards that Bayliss and McNulty was suffering during the game. So you sort of give them a little bit of leeway with the caveat of they knew how important it was before they went on the pitch, and still quite a few of them didn't really put in performances which sort of showed that they understood how important the game was before they went on the pitch. If that makes sense. I mean, Accrington did that thing. Basically, last week's pod talked about there's quite a few things that this team's going to have to do and demonstrate if they want to go up. And one of those things was sort of, if in adversity, how do you respond? And after 3 minutes, Accrington took the lead. Now, in the first 3 minutes, McNulty went down in the box. And I find it really difficult when McNulty goes down because I never know whether or not he's been fouled or he's just fallen over, because he falls over a lot. But some people around me were absolutely adamant it was a penalty. I can't. You know what I mean? It's like he might have been pulled back, he might not have been. Because it doesn't take a lot of effort to make him fall over. You've got that doubt in your mind. And I don't know what Neil thought, but it was just sort of, is that a penalty? I can't.
No idea, mate.
Yeah.
I don't really. I'm kind of in the same boat as you. At the time, obviously, you're the home crowd. You try your best to turn it into something. I've seen it a couple of times since. I mean, see why he didn't give it, but you can see him giving as well. I mean, it's kind of the issue with football more than anything else, and the rules don't make much sense. But yeah, wasn't too fussed about that one.
Neither was I. And as I said, I mean, I know afterwards, Mark Robbins came out and went, Accrington are streetwise. And I was trying to work out what he meant, because I don't think they particularly time wasted or dived, or I thought they were just very professional in what they did. What they didn't do was really basic errors. And that's one thing that we did. And the first goal, people know I'm a fan of Dion Kelly-Evans. He was out-muscled. The guy got past him too easily. He crossed it in. Both of our centre-backs were on their heels. The keeper was probably in the wrong position, and they scored. And you were like, okay, this was already a difficult game. With the injuries, Doyle missing, with the illnesses, we're not sure who's fully fit, but you've now got to show that you're the sort of team who can come back from 1-0 down. You've got 90 minutes, basically, because there's going to be 3 minutes of injury time. You've got you've got enough time to get this back. The question is, can you get this back? And the answer to that question, skipping to the end, is no. And they never looked like getting it back. There were very few shots, very few opportunities, few corners, free kicks, things which create goals, like decent crosses. Up until Kyle Reid came on, we didn't cross, or we don't get in dangerous areas to cross the ball. So there was nothing from the wide players for the first 60, 70 minutes. The defence, you look at the second goal, and you sort of, well, Willis and, whatever you say about injuries, Rod McDonald and Jordan Willis were our first centre partnership for the majority of the season. When they played together, we've kept 8 clean sheets. That is a first choice centre-half partnership. And watching them both go for the same ball is just indefensible. That's just awful. I'm sorry. And the reason they went for that, in my opinion, is because they've been so poor up to that point. It was an enthusiastic bad decision making. It was to try and correct some of the things they'd done wrong all game. And you're just like, you can't, one of you's got to lead that. Both of you are, you played a couple of 100 games at this level or high level. You're not inexperienced players. That's just bad defending. I'm sorry. And Accrington that's what they did against us. They didn't make that mistake. When that could have occurred, one of them dealt with it. One of their defenders just hacked it clear. And you sort of man for man throughout the team, we just underperformed against an Accrington team who aren't particularly brilliant, but they're very solid. They're very good at what they do. And they're, to some extent, a template of where you want to be. And they fully deserve to win the game because we never looked like getting back into it. And it's just, how many of these home games have we seen over the years? Hundreds. And, I know some people say, it's one result, but it's, you tie it into the Exeter game, you tie it into the Colchester game. We've now lost 3 on the bounce. And it was the sort of game where you needed someone to stand out, someone to be stood up and be counted. And you looked at some of your senior players like Liam Kelly, Mark McNulty, accept his illness. They didn't perform. Vincenzi was, not really involved. The only bright spark was probably Kyle Reid. And you're hoping you can get something like that out of him again. But it's not worth discussing. It was just, nothing happened. We had, one shot on target in the entire game. We got what we deserved, which was a beating. And it set you up now for the next 3, the next 3 games are absolutely critical. But you've got no faith in that team to actually come out of it with a result.
Tell us more about Reedy.
Well, he is what he is, isn't he? He's one of those players who, on his day, when he wants to, when it's in his mind, like Port Vale at home last season, he is an old-fashioned winger who wants to get to the byline, and he can cross the ball. He put in 3 really, really good crosses that Vincenzi probably should have done better with at least 2 of them. He should have made the keeper work on at least one occasion out of those 3. They were good crosses. The question is, you're not sure where his mind's at. You don't know if that's, if we can get something out of him. But without Jody Jones, he's the only player we've got who can carry the ball with pace. We've left in the squad. In terms of a provider of chances, he is better than Jordan Shipley on that wing. And from what I've seen of the other players we play on the wing, he's a step up on the other players we play in terms of creating chances, putting balls into the box. It's just whether or not whether or not Robbins will play him, and whether or not he'll keep that momentum up, because we do know with Kyle Reid in the past that he can blow hot and cold. But he's definitely someone who could fire us into better positions, because he is naturally a wide player who wants to do the job that we need him to do.
What did you make of it, Neil?
Pretty much agree with what I think Paul said. I mean, it's very hard to pick any positives from it, because we did that thing again where we seem to have performances where the entire team plays well, or the inverse where the entire team plays poorly. There's never just a couple of players playing poorly in the team. It just seems to be throughout, and even players who I like and always think that they've got a genuine sort of level of quality about them just weren't playing well. I mean, even Dion Kelly-Evans, I've never really seen him play particularly poorly, but it wasn't a very good game for him. Bayliss just had a bad game of football, like everybody does, and he'll obviously have to learn from that. I will say that I thought actually Biamu, once again, for what he had to work with and kind of how the sort of the ebb and flow of the game went, I thought he did really well. I thought from a sort of running perspective, and he was trying his best to at least craft something, and there was just nothing really there for him, because the only way he was going to do something was if he was going to literally score, get the ball back and take it past players and then score it. There was no one else really working around him to the sort of same level of intensity. So, I mean, I think much of it can be put down to, I think we should probably put a lot of it down to sort of the illness, because we don't, if that's sort of sweeping through the squad, I mean, that's going to have an impact. It's going to affect people's sort of mindset. They're going to feel a little bit more tentative, which isn't really what you need in a big game like that. So it all kind of came together to provide quite a poor game, and obviously a massive anti-climax to the fact that we had a lot of people there eager to watch a game which could have seen us get into the top three. And this is what's daft about the situation that we're in at the moment. And the sort of the league, it's just so sort of balanced, where within 7 days you go from looking at a league table and really eyeing up like automatic promotion to 7 days later, the amount of people I've seen saying, well, that's the season over then, it's gone, it's done. And fair enough, it's it's not good when you have to watch your team sort of play that poorly and get out-muscled and beaten by a team who you're kind of challenging with. But at the same time, there is a lot to go, and if we can't just judge these few games and sort of make an assessment of the whole season based on these, there were lots of games in the season where we played really well. I think my concern at the moment now is that whereas throughout December and the early part of January, we developed a nice sort of stable team. There was players and personnel, and it's kind of a style which was working for us. And through sort of needless tinkering and then obviously bad luck through injuries and stuff, we've now got something that's just completely unknown, and we're just guessing now as to whether we can somehow conjure this winning lineup again. And that feels like bad luck. But part of it also feels like a little bit of Robbins' fault in the fact that he made forced changes, tried to get players back into the team where, like I say, Kelly, when it kind of maybe didn't need to, and it just disrupts things. It just disrupts people like Shipley, and now he's coming back in, and now he's having to move into the centre, and even the new guys coming in, Clark Harris's Reed, they may play well in isolation, but it just disrupts things even more. And I don't really know kind of where to go with it, really, because it was a really poor game, and you wanted to treat it as a poor game with all the caveats. But then obviously we moved on to last night, and we lost again, which just compounds things.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I agree with you that we shouldn't be too histrionic. But it is very, very difficult to have lost 3 on the bounce, and it's always difficult, isn't it? Because if we win a game, always it's a case of we go, well, that's important, but it's about what we do next, and it's almost impossible until you do win a load of games on the bounce to make it happen. And it has to really only be at the end of the season when you sort of then go through that and go, oh, we did it, and then it's successful. But it is a massive kick in the dick when you lose 3 in a row, isn't it? Because you're looking at the table now, whilst I don't think it's dead by any stretch, it just becomes harder and harder and harder to then go, oh, well, it's only... Before the games that we've lost, we were saying as long as we keep up the thing of winning 4 in 6, we should be okay. But you think that now it's probably got to be more than that, hasn't it?
Well, that's kind of the almost the attitude that I think you need to take. So I think losing 3 in a row, there's definitely reason to be angry there, because we're in League 2 and we're aiming for something which demands better than losing 3 in a row. It's just kind of maintaining that element of sort of focus and not accepting a fate before it's anywhere close to being certain. I mean, the idea should be, we got to fix this and we got to fix this now. And it's also easy just to say this stuff, but that's really needs to be the mood in the camp and needs to be the mood around us. I mean, there's only one goal this season, go up. So it might make people feel better to kind of just give up on it straight away, because so they're kind of guarding against, failure and stuff. But actually, I mean, I don't think it helps anybody just giving up at this point of the season. We've been there before. I mean, you can easily just let 6 or 7 games go past because you've just given up and you're not really pushing for it. But it just needs to be fixed. Fixed now, and be angry, but use that anger in a good way.
There's two things. I mean, one of the things is you look at the last couple of results, and we've lost 3 on the bounce, and it's frustrating. The problem is you look at the upcoming fixtures, and Mansfield won 5-1. And Wickham beat Swindon. Wickham continually win, and they win these attritional games. And our away form is now lost 5 of the last 6. And we're going to go to those 2 games. And the general, I think, thought process is, rightly or wrongly, I think fans have already sort of written those 2 results off as being defeats, which then means you're sort of not looking at 3 losses, you're looking at 5 on the bounce. And Exeter are a place above us, and they've got 2 games in hand. And you're like, oh, okay, possibly by the time that we play Lincoln at home, who are also 3 points above us at this moment in time, we could be 6 or 7 points outside the playoffs. That's a concern. A concern, me and Joey had a discussion about the injuries before. Yeah, teams get injuries. I think one of the things is, I sort of agree with, one of the things I agree most with Neil is he's disrupted the team unnecessarily in terms of he's played Barrett for a game, he's then dropped him for a game. It's sort of, you've brought these players in, either have faith in them and give them every game, or don't have faith in them and trust Shipley, who's been your first choice for 2 months and has done well enough for the team to actually be on a roll. He just seemed to have I mean, no one knows who our first choice right winger is because it changes game in, game out, and that's not down to injury. He's physically chosen 3 different right wingers to start his last 3 games. That's down to his tactics, and you're like, well, yeah, you've been unlucky. Grimm had been injured, but he's only missed 2 league games this season. It's like, that's almost unheard of these days for players to play every game. So the fact that he's played virtually every game, Jordan Willis has played virtually every game, Stokes could have played every game, but you decided to bring in Haynes, that's fine. So but you've gone back to Stokes. Stokes is clearly your first choice left back. At the moment, you're playing 4 of your first choice back 5. That's, injuries happen, that's why you have a squad. The question is, in midfield, who are your first choice wide players? That's, that injury isn't stopping you choosing the same player each week. Tactics are making you change. Your front two's been settled for months now. So the only player in midfield you're really missing, as in terms of injury, is Doyle. Again, he's 36. To expect him to play every game was probably a bit of a long shot. So I just think the injury thing, I think it just bugs me. It's like, yeah, you get injuries. The reason the midfield is unsettled is, as you say, basically, Robbins has decided to unsettle that midfield. And it hasn't worked. There is no continuity in that midfielder at all at the moment. They're not providing, Bayliss has provided another goal, which is great, but the wide players aren't providing chances. They're not providing goals either. The reality of the situation is Luton, who are top, who are 17 points above us, have scored twice as many goals as us, yet have only conceded 5 more than us. So it's not even like, oh, they play this cavalier approach to football. Kevin Keegan would be proud. They're playing, they're just as tight defensively as we are, but they've scored twice as many goals. I'm sorry, that's either down to the manager or the players. But the fact that I think even Wickham has scored nearly 30 more goals than us this season, that's what's stopping us going up. And again, I don't see that being a player issue as much as I see that as a those are our tactics. We clearly don't go out to try and score many goals. You saw that on Saturday. At no point did you actually think that Accrington were under any sustained pressure. We don't build pressure. And you're like, well, for me, the concern is if we lose the next 2 games, Lincoln at home is then massive, can we then, we'll only have 10 games left of the season, or 11 games left of the season, can we win 8 of those 10 or 7 of those 10? Can we go on that sustained form, which means we're going to have to beat someone like Luton or Notts County? We're going to have to go away and potentially win, because we'll only have 4 away games left after the next 2. Can we win every one of our away games after that? I look at the season as a whole. We haven't, our away form hasn't been good enough. Our away form is the 12th best in the division. Hence, we're outside the playoffs. Something's got to click, which hasn't clicked so far.
Neil, you were saying?
I was just going to jump in around. I see what you're saying, and obviously you do look at the fixtures, and all we've got is kind of data and results and forms and stuff to kind of inform our views on things. But I mean, we also know that form is so transient. We've seen that already this year. I mean, it only takes even half a match for suddenly the team to either look entirely different or look entirely worse. And my issue is writing off, or not saying that you are doing this, but this notion of writing off another 3 games as probably not going to win these, and then working on from that point. Because actually, I mean, we've got a game this weekend. We've seen how the team out of nowhere turns something on for an FA Cup match, and then you don't know how that's then going to spark them for the next match onwards. So I'm just really wary and mindful of always wishing our lives away and kind of thinking too far ahead from this point in time. And actually, when players should come back into form, certain players will. I mean, things change from game to game, and it's not a matter of sort of looking at the 3 games time and saying, well, at the moment, like, this one team's played well and we've played poorly, because we all know, in the space of a week, we've gone from being automatic contenders to questioning whether we're even going to make the playoffs. I mean, that's how sort of slippery this whole sort of method of judging form is. It changes week by week. So I'm downhearted, obviously, because we've lost 3 in a row, and there is always a worry that I always think it's harder to build up good form versus lose. You can quite easily just sustain poor form for the rest of the season, because it all takes effort, doesn't it? But I'm really not as downhearted in the sense where I'm looking at the fixtures ahead and saying, well, that is a definite loss, because there's so many other elements to it that will come into play. And I think one of the key points is kind of that anger element. I think that is necessary at this point, because it needs to mean something. Because what it sort of takes me back to is, everyone remembers the Mowbray season where we should have gone up, and we did the same thing. We had a bad week where I think we lost to Walsall at home, and so another Burton potentially we drew or something. We didn't quite make the points that we wanted to make.
We conceded it was an equaliser in the last 10 minutes at home against Walsall, wasn't it? And then it was Burton beat us quite comprehensively, I think.
Yeah.
That was meant to be the test of whether we were going to go up or not, and we kind of bottled it, didn't we?
Yeah, because we were expecting those to be this was when we had assert ourselves and we'd go to the top of the league, and that would be it. And things didn't quite go our way. And then I remember the fallout from those 2 games when we were actually in still quite a good position, and it was just, look at the games in hand of the other teams, and there was just this whole mindset of, well, that's it then. And it's just a strange one, and it also led to like dismissing players from the team when actually they just made a mistake. Like, I think Aaron Phillips was dropped after one of those games because he made a handball or something, and that was it. It was punished. And it's kind of, there's a knee-jerk reaction to something that maybe isn't quite as bad as you first think. So I just there's a sort of a mindfulness now about having the right reaction, and that kind of a determined reaction rather than kind of just an accepting reaction. And this is from the fans and the players and everything, because the last thing I want is for the players to, I know they shouldn't do this, but kind of look at social media and kind of get the feeling that we don't believe in them anymore. We don't believe they're going to go up. I believe that we are a good team in this league, and we've had a bad week, and we need to find the ways around it. I mean, I believe Jordan Willis and Rodden McDonald are a good centre-back partnership. What they did the other day was rubbish, but I don't think they are rubbish as a partnership. So it's just it's about finding that balance between seeing things as terminal when actually they don't have to be.
I understand that. I think my issue at the moment is that we are currently outside the playoffs with 14 games to go. We don't score goals. Our away form is horrific. And I'm perfectly honest, fucking angry about it. Because
I like it. That's good.
But we go back to that Vera Modifan thing at the start of the season. That was my first season of having a season ticket. And you're like, do I want to go through this again next season? Do I want to sit there and get to this point in the season? Like, we shouldn't be this low in this division. I'm sorry. I know we've had a couple of injuries and shit happens. Other clubs have had injuries. But we shouldn't be this low in this division. Because I've seen a lot of teams in this division and most of them are shit. But I watched Accrington and were like, that, I don't know any of their players. All I see there is a team that does the basics well and clearly has a plan in how they're trying to score goals. And I accept that. You walk away just going, Accrington were the better team. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Accrington were the better team. I've seen them twice. Both times, walked away going, Accrington were the better team. And it's like, just sick of it, to be honest. And it's just, it's not a case of we dismiss. I understand we're talking about forming and transient, but also when you've won one of 6 away games and you're not picking, we don't look like we're going to beat one of these top sides. I'm not sure how Mansfield are on form at the moment, and they've just gone and demolished Storm 5-1. And it's just like, well, it's difficult for me not to be like, oh, okay, they're a really good side. Their home form is really good. They score goals for fun, and we're a bit shit at the moment.
What I'm saying is that a week ago, we were the ones with the good home form. We won 7 in a row.
Yeah, we were.
So it's a week. It's. I mean, we're talking 7 to 10 days, whatever it's been. It's not a long time for that to be sort of set in stone, that opinion.
True, but that's our away form has been shit for months. We don't score enough away from home. We don't keep clean sheets away from home. Last night, they got in a position where they should have kept it. Once you got back into that game against Colchester last night, you make sure you get a draw. That's it. You just we come from 1-0 behind. You bolt that fucking door. You sit in 2 banks of 4, and you're like a 1-1 away draw at Colchester keeps Colchester. It's about management of league position and management of position and points at this moment in time. It's a bit like game management as well. Like, you look at that game, you're like, we keep this at 1-1, we keep Colchester behind us, and we keep within 2 points of the playoffs. That's all we have to do in this game. We win it, it's great, but mainly it's about not losing. It's a bit like the Accrington game. The Accrington game was all about keeping Accrington within 6 points of us. So it was like, whatever you do, you can't lose. Because if you go 9 points beyond Accrington, basically, I don't think we're going to finish in the top 3. I don't think we're going to win 3 more games than the teams in the top 3. We're clearly not going to catch Luton because they're 17 points clear. So we're not going to catch them. Okay, the next job is, can we get in the top 3? We've now given ourselves 9 points, and we've still to go to Wickham. The next job is, can we get in the playoffs? That means we've got to keep within 3 points of the playoffs. We can't let teams get easy points ahead of us. So yesterday, you look at the league table with 20 minutes to go, and you're like, a draw benefits Coventry City. A victory would be brilliant, but it's not a necessity. Just make sure we draw. It keeps us in a nice position. And they can't do it. They bottle it. And you're like, that worries me. That sort of attitude shows to me that they don't understand how you get promoted. You don't have to win every game. You just got to make sure you don't lose in critical situations. You don't hand the initiative to other clubs. And the defeat against Colchester now puts pressure on that Mansfield game. We can't lose against both Mansfield and Wickham if we want to finish in the playoffs. Especially not Mansfield, because that will then put them 8 points clear of us. So it adds pressure to the Mansfield game. You're like, each time we lose, we add pressure to the next game. It becomes more and more must-win to the point where we're going to have 4 games left. And it's like we're going to have to win all 4 to get in the playoffs. It's like, well, that's stupid.
Pressure's there regardless now, isn't it? Though, I mean, that's it.
But,
That's playoffs. I mean, if you don't get in, you need playoff form. You need the only being able to lose 2 more games the rest of the season.
Yeah,
and
so just don't lose with 10 minutes. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying.
No, I do agree. I mean, we've got to use it, haven't we? From yesterday, we've got to use that whatever that feeling is, because you're absolutely right about yesterday. It's completely wrong where they had the opportunity to give themselves a platform, and it was just sloppiness and poor game management. But it needs to be the catalyst. And what I don't want is that Mowbray tameness, that kind of just going through games and letting games just get chalked off without any real sort of intensity or passion from anybody around the club. I want to feel that anger now. I don't want to wait till it's too late and then suddenly. I mean, this time last year we had Sam Ricketts, not last year, a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
Sam Ricketts telling us that we'd already achieved. I don't want these players this season thinking, we've done well in the FA Cup and I've done some good things. I've had a good season. Definitely not had a good season. If they don't get up, we need to sack Robbins. You can't not go up this season. This is football in 2018. This is Coventry City in League 2. You need to have these things need to be the real risks for these people. They can't have safety because they need to know that it's not good enough not going up this year. That's needs to be in the mindset.
And that's why the injury thing bugs me the most at the moment, because we've got injuries, and it's like, as I said, he's got 4 of his first choice back 5. He's got his first choice front 2. The wingers we haven't had, since Joe Jones been injured, we haven't had first choice wingers. So whoever he played on the wing, and it's sort of, and it's like, we missed Doyle. Doyle's 36.
Yeah.
We shouldn't. The people, it's like, we missed Doyle. It's like, yeah, but it's not like he's fucking Paul Scholes or Roy Keane. He's an all right League 2 central midfielder. But it shouldn't be like, we're going to lose every game because Mickey Doyle isn't there. It's like, because that sort of, I think that then gives players and everyone the attitude of, we can lose this because Doyle's not playing. It's like, well,
do you remember the other week and everybody was saying that we just didn't need Ben Stevenson? We had enough cover. Yeah, that worked out, didn't it?
that still baffles me. Wasn't Doyle injured before the end of January?
Yeah, he's been carrying it for a while, hasn't he?
And it's like, so you've left us in a situation where we have. I know Jordan Shipley can play centre midfield. He's 19. It's like if Liam Kelly goes down injured, we're going to have a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old in centre midfield against Mansfield and Wickham. I'm sure they're going to be petrified by that. So it just baffles me sometimes the decisions that people make and they're allowed to get, and like no one criticises it. You can't criticise him. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but that just seems weird. If you can't get a replacement in for him because it's too late, don't let Stevenson go.
Let's put a pin in this and take some Brighton preview from Dominic and come back and we can talk about the upcoming Brighton game ourselves. So this is Dominic and his Brighton preview. Hello, Dominic. Thanks for joining us.
Hiya, good to be on as always.
Brighton, this is the big time for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's finally sort of a proper test of whether I know what I'm talking about, because people actually have more tangible evidence out there to compare against.
Yeah, this is the first time that I think no more so than literally any other football fan might be able to add, but I know some of these players and I've watched a bit of Brighton and I've got a vague idea of what they look like. But you tell us in a bit more detail, first of all, how they're doing this season. The Premier League is a bit of a mystery to me this season because I thought that there's a lot of teams like Brighton and Huddersfield who seem to sort of, roughly speaking, be having a good season. And then there's a bunch of other teams like West Ham and Southampton who seem to be having terrible seasons. But then when you look at the league table, they basically just from one week to the other just like appear in a random formation. They're actually doing a lot worse than I thought. But recently they've been okay, haven't they?
Yeah, they sort of picked up the past couple of games, strung a couple of wins together. When they got promoted to the Premier League, I was kind of worried about just the way Chris Hughton sets teams up. He's a very cautious manager I found, and I didn't see the sort of the attacking players Brighton had of being sort of good enough to lift a sort of solid-ish defence. But I'd say of the three promoted teams, they've probably adapted most seamlessly to life in the Premier League. Look at Newcastle; it's been sort of very up and down, and Huddersfield they've had about 5 or 6 good games and have looked pretty poor for the rest of the season. Brighton have sort of just been more consistent, and it just seems they've got a core about them. They're solid, and they've just got a couple of good attacking players who seem to occasionally sort of stir something up front.
One of those attacking players is their top scorer, presumably Glenn Murray. Have you been surprised by how good he's been in the Premier League, given a load of failed starts?
Yeah, so Glenn Murray sort of fits into my category of what I call a Premier League 2 player.
Yeah.
The Premier League 2, in my mind, is sort of an imaginary division between the Premier League and the Championship, where all the players who were too good for the Championship but not good enough for the Premier League play. And Glenn Murray was sort of one of the Premier League 2 stalwarts. I think he's quite a physical player, and sort of he makes things happen. But I don't think he's ever been the most clinical finishers, even though he's had a couple of seasons in the Championship where he's been scoring 20, 25 goals. Never saw him as an ultra clinical player, but it just seems that this Brighton side just works better for him. He's not up against sort of the same quality of strikers perhaps he's been at with other clubs, where he's just been given more of an opportunity to play himself into form.
Would Anthony Knockaert form one of your Premier League 2 players, given the, I guess, quite disappointing season that he's had, given his high heights of last season?
Yeah, he was another one I was thinking about. I'll have to spend more time plotting out this Premier League 2, but yeah, Anthony Knockaert's definitely in that category. He's been, I wouldn't say he's exactly been disappointing for Brighton. It's just he was just so good in the Championship. He was just unsufferable, and then in the Premier League, he's just been a bit of a frustrating player.
To what extent do you think that the emergence of, is it Gross or Gross, has stifled him a little bit?
Well, they kind of play different positions, where Gross plays just behind the striker generally. He's sort of more of a central midfielder, really. But he's sort of really taken the crux of the creativity from that side, and Knockaert generally plays out wide. And perhaps just because he doesn't have as much time on the ball at a high level, he just hasn't had as much of an opportunity to express himself. They've also had Jose Izquierdo sort of emerge the past couple of games, scoring some brilliant goals. The one against West Ham was amazing, and that team goal they scored against Stoke last weekend was really impressive. Just the quick pace that they're playing. And Izquierdo, a left winger, which is fitting because his name means left.
Is it?
Yeah, he's sort of really emerged after sort of slowly adapting to the Premier League. So he's another one to watch out for, although this discussion does feel a bit academic, because I think it's pretty certain that Brighton are going to play a weakened team, although that's a weakened team probably consisting of Tim Krul, Knockaert, and a few other sort of good Championship, Premier League level players. So,
do you really think they will?
Yeah, so I've sort of looked at the teams they've picked in the previous rounds, where I think they played Middlesbrough in the last round, and they played pretty much a completely second-string team. And I just think in the situation they're in the Premier League, where they'll probably feel the cup's a bit of a distraction, and I mean, they're up against a League 2 team, not in great form at the moment. I don't think they'll be that bothered about this game. It's also a chance for them to give their big signing in January, Jurgen Locadia, who's sort of a big, pacey striker from PSV, his first run out. So I think that's what they'll be more focused on. I'm sure they'll love to get to the 6th round, and obviously it's sort of a presentable tie for them, and losing at home to a League 2 side would be pretty embarrassing. But I think that Chris Hughton will have faith that his second string will do it for them.
There's something of a kind of a ritual of patronising a centre-back partnership who've come up from the league below and done surprisingly well in the Premier League. I wondered if you fancied patronising Duncan Duffy for Brighton.
Yeah, it's sort of odd because they are a good central defensive partnership, but both seem fairly prone to scoring own goals. I think Dunk has the most own goals in the Premier League this season, and Duffy, memorably, when he was at Blackburn at the start of last season, chucked a couple into his own net. So, yeah,
But a decent...
they're sort of good physical defenders. Dunk especially looks the better of the two, sort of more mobile. Duffy's sort of a walking head, it seems.
And then the big question, given the sort of the games we've played in the Cup and the games where we've been more successful, is there a chance that Brighton perhaps coming out and being at home and attacking us will play into our hands, or ultimately do you think that they will just have too much for us?
I think they've got too much quality for us. I think one of the things that maybe could play into our hands if we were sort of in better form, if we had a more settled team. If you think sort of over the past couple of weeks, just the players have come back into our team from injury and the players we signed, and also players have gone out injured. There's just been too much disruption for the sides just to have that core to maybe take advantage of the Brighton side who are feeling the pressure to attack, and it's a new team for them as well. I just think we're not in a state at the moment to put off a shock, although I am a natural pessimist. So maybe the occasion will just galvanise everyone, sort of be a nice distraction from the league.
I think this game has come at the wrong time. I think if this had been three weeks ago, I think Brighton were in quite poor form and we were in very good form, and I think they would have still felt the need to come at us, and I think it would have played into our hands. I just think that, like you say, that is he Locadia, the PSV striker, did you say?
Yeah.
I think they will play him. He'll be desperate to impress, and I don't think we'll get anywhere near him. I don't think he's the best player in the world, is he? But I think the sort of, like you say, he's a big fella, isn't he?
Yeah, and quick.
Yeah,
he can play out wide too.
I just think they'll have too much class for us, won't they? Ultimately, I wanted to ask you before you go whether you had any words for Neil for Sky Blues blog, who I saw that last week accused you of being a scaredy cat in your prediction for Accrington, which then roundly massively came to pass.
No, I think I can accept the scaredy cat tag. I'd rather be a scaredy cat than some sort of scary Roy Keane figure shouting failure at 19-year-olds after a long, hard season.
Yeah, fair dues. The Michael Brown of this parish. Okay, cool. Well, let's hope that we do better than we both expect, and we'll speak to you next week. Cheers.
All right, yeah, speak to you then.
Before we carry on with the pod, a quick plug that I forgot to do while we were properly recording. There is the Sky Blue Trust open meeting that's happening at 7:30 p.m. this following Monday, which is I can't remember, is it the 19th maybe? Well worth a look. They're being joined by the Academy Manager, Richard Stevens, one Academy graduate who's to be revealed, and pod regular Jim Brown, well, semi-regular. Jim Brown is going to be here, there, talking about his book, and he's bringing Dietmar Brook as well. It's at the Albany Club on Earlsdon High Street. It's 7:30 start, and it's free, but they'd like people to register their interest. If you go to eventbrite.co.uk, in fact, I'm never going to be able to do that. We'll post the link on the Twitter for Neil Lamptey Show, at Neil Lamptey Show. If you look for the Sky Blue Trust's website or their Twitter, all the details are on there too. Sounds like it'll be a really good evening. Go down there, have some fun. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Dominic. What do you think for Brighton then, Neil? Thoughts?
It's, in many ways, it can be a one-off. I mean, there's no reason why we should be sort of beating teams like Stoke, really, by rights. And we put in a performance which the quality was upped, but the intensity and the effort was upped as well. So, I mean, we should go there feeling good about it, make it hard for them, and, just have a great day. But still, don't let ourselves down. I mean, that's kind of the key for me. I don't want to go there and get absolutely smashed. I mean, sometimes it can be hard, but I mean, there's a certain level of performance and just sort of intensity that I think you can put in against certain players that will just make it more difficult for them. So I'm just hoping we go there and just give us a little bit of hope, because otherwise it's a fun day out and that. But I don't really go to football for the fun day out. I kind of want us to win football matches. So I know other people will have a great day, and it's a nice sort of location. And I've only ever been to Brighton once, not the football ground, the place. So it'll be a bit of fun, kind of taking in the town. But yeah, I really do want us to, make a good show of it, really.
I just think I know this is a typically miserable thing to say. There was a point when we got drawn against them that I thought, this is actually, as daft a thing as it is to say, this is almost a perfect draw for us. They were playing terribly. They would have been inclined to they'd have had to have come at us at the time, and we were going into games feeling reasonably comfortable in those situations. It was off the back of Swindon, Dons. There was something about it that you thought, we might just nick these. And a few weeks later, you can't help but think, no, I don't think that's going to happen.
With the good team that was working, the Grimmer right back, Boyle, that I could trust in that game to kind of at least put in a sensible performance. My issue is I don't really know what Robin's going to do this weekend at all. I have no idea what he's going to come up with. So that's obviously a worry.
Paul, what do you reckon?
I think Brighton will just, at the end of the day, we're an average League Two side and they're a Premier League team who are finding their feet. I just think they'll do a professional job on us and it'll be 2 or 3-0. I know we beat Stoke, and I still think there's still part of you which is like Stoke were there for the taking that day. They were just in complete disarray, and they clearly, I said at the time, Mark Robbins' half-time team talk was like, if you want to keep me in a job, go and win the second half and get us through. If you don't care, because the Stoke players knew if they lost, he was gone. I just think that mindset, I think, for Stoke was there. I think Brighton are just they're just in a different place as a football club. They're sort of getting their ideals around what they're doing in the Premier League, and we're a lower league team who aren't particularly that good. I just think this really would be a shock if we pull this one out.
Yeah, I think.
I just think they're just going to dismiss us in the way that Premier League. If you look at the way other Premier League teams have dealt with some of our esteemed colleagues in League Two, they've just put them to the sword.
Do you remember a few years ago? I don't think we'll be put to the
sword, but I think they'll beat us.
Do you remember a few years ago we played Tottenham in the third round and they went 3-0 up at half time, and then they just read the paper for the second half?
Oh, that was the most impressive performance I've seen a team against us. I know it's against us, but bloody hell, watching that game, they were so good. That was Bale.
Gareth Bale, yeah.
Yeah, I've just been...
Whatever happened to him?
We couldn't cope.
Yeah, I have a feeling that whilst it might not be quite that bad, I get a feeling that they'll sort of reach a comfortable score and sit back. But we can but hope, of course. No questions from listeners this week. Do we need to plug anything? Anything we need to talk about?
I might be on the telly. That's one thing. Yeah, this is weird. I got a message from some guy from BBC Sport today, just sort of saying, we want to do sort of a bit on a fan's day. So I was like, oh shit, he's going to follow me around all day. And apparently, I've just got to film myself for a bit. Like, this is what made me think I shouldn't do it. Like sort of vlogger style. And then when it gets to the ground, they just film me a bit and kind of film my reactions and stuff. And if that happens, then I'll be on the BBC. But as I'm saying it, I just think that's going to be the worst thing ever. So
saying that, some of these YouTubers are driving around in Lamborghinis. That's what I've read. So
yeah, I don't have the personality or the control of my anxiety to deal with that. So
I'd like to see it. What? So hang on a second. So you're going to be? So you have to wake up and be like, "Hi, it's game day," that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think I might just put, like, say, a persona on or something. I won't be myself. I could just be another version of me. The less weird one. Let's see. I don't really know. I'll get a proper phone call about it tomorrow. But yeah, it could be that you all see me on TV at some point.
That's super
exciting stuff.
Paul, any?
Wear your T-shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Yeah. That's the one. Yeah.
The show.
Yeah.
I need to buy one first.
Yeah. That is brilliant to me that we had T-shirts and that you two don't even own one.
Yeah.
Paul, TV appearances, no?
No. That'd be scary, wouldn't it?
They haven't
I've got nothing. I've got nothing to play. I'm not going to Brighton. I know it sounds awful. I have very little interest in the Brighton game at all. So I'll probably just drive. I think I'm driving back my parents. So I'll keep an eye on the score. But I hope everyone has a really good day. By the sounds of it, Brighton away is a really nice place to go. So enjoy yourselves on your trip to Brighton and have a thoroughly enjoyable day. But
That feels
I couldn't care less about the FA Cup, to be honest. I just don't want to be in this division anymore. I think we're going to be here next season. And having done this before, I know that basically that just means that we're 3 years from dropping out the other end. As you know, Bayliss will go in the summer, Jody Jones will go in the summer, McNulty will go in the summer.
I mean, that train's never late, is it?
No, never.
I mean, when you said go out and have a nice day, blah, 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 I went to say, well, that's a nice place to finish this. But obviously you
then
kept,
3 years later,
obviously you kept talking.
We're on league.
Yeah.
Well, at least when we've got the FA Vars to go for, that was what my nephew Sherman was talking about.
Yeah. I mean,
and another trip to Wembley.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, apart from that, everything's great. I'm quite excited about the Brighton game. I think it will be. I mean, it's a fun day, isn't it? It's a freebie, and I guess actually it's at least one step between the inevitability that I think it is that we won't go up this season. At least it gives us one more week of hope and possibility before that's swiftly whipped away from us at Mansfield. Right, okay. If you want to get in touch with us, it's at Neil Ampty Show on Twitter, neilamptyshow@gmail.com on the email. Paul, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Neil, look forward to seeing you on telly.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening. Bye.